Part 20. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 194. The 404th round of hunting ends and the 405th round of hunting begins. The 405th round of hunting time, 2240-2300 hours. 405th round hunter players, 4401-4500 Dalbroach numbers. Sutingu waited, and finally it was time for her third round of hunting. So, Sutingu went to meet the little girl in a candy store that he had agreed on during the second round with great anticipation. Elder sister. The first time she saw Sutingu, the little girl Nyomi ran over with joy on her face. Xiao Nyomi, sister misses you so much. Sutingu hugged the little girl, then let go, with a light smile as soft and gentle as the spring breeze and drizzle. I miss my sister too, the little girl responded with a slight blush on her face. Sutingu took the little girl's hand and said in a warm voice, "Let's go, take sister to those places." "Okay, sister." This round, Sutingu made up her mind not to give up points. Anyway, she didn't encounter a few doll bodies in the whole round, so it was more cost-effective to touch the corpses. It feels good to touch a corpse for a while, and it feels good to touch a corpse all the time. Sutingu didn't want to stop touching the corpse now. What are points? Are you happy touching corpses? Because of Sutingu's previous ideological work, this corpse touching trip was very smooth and enjoyable. A total of 14 corpses were touched and 70 game items were obtained. And it's not just bread or mineral water, it's a huge profit. In the remaining 3 minutes, Sutingu said goodbye to the little girl, using the same words as in the previous round. After being separated from the cute and caring children, Sutingu planned to wander around and try her luck. If you can find a doll body, this is it. But Sutingu never expected that her amazing luck would become a blockbuster. She unexpectedly encountered a very familiar gray wolf doll body. It's obvious whose doll body this is. In a quiet garden. Sutingu stared at the gray wolf doll on the ground with a smile on his face, and greeted him warmly, "Hello, what a coincidence, we are really destined." Li Ji's face was blank. I was already cursing inside. Why is he so unlucky? First, he was forced to jump off the building and flee, and then the assassination failed and his identity was revealed. Even the animal model of the doll body was known to most players. Moreover, after 2 rounds, he couldn't find where the female player's doll body was hidden. Now what the hell, I meet a female player who is a hunter player again. Without saying anything, the gray wolf doll immediately wanted to escape. But Sutingu, who had been guarding him, quickly summoned little Kanhua and blocked all the gray wolf doll's escape routes with canes. Sutingu took out his scythe, still smiling, and approached the gray wolf doll step by step. Li Ji was so anxious that he came up with various escape methods, using game props, decorative props, halo functions, all of them. But this time, there won't be a chick to help him attract firepower. Sutingu didn't talk nonsense and directly swung the sickle. Chiang. When the knife went down, there was a collision sound between metals, but the gray wolf doll was unscathed. Sutingu was slightly startled, and then remembered Li Ji's ability to harden his entire body. So, put away the sickle. Before the gray wolf doll had time to rejoice, 2 hands suddenly fell down and grabbed the torso and head of the gray wolf doll respectively. Sutingu smiled at the gray wolf doll, and then exerted force on his hand. Tear. In the horrified eyes of the gray wolf doll, he was split into 2. I didn't save the manuscript, really, believe me. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 195. But it's not over yet. It was just split in 2, and the damage was not enough to 85%. So, Sutingu continued to tear apart. Take out the stuffing inside the doll, and then tear the leather sheath of the gray wolf doll into pieces of rags. divided into pieces by 5 horses. The body was broken into pieces. It can be said that it is extremely cruel and beautiful. Player Angel Su destroys a doll body, points add 50, add 3750. The degree of damage to the player's Demon Hunter doll body is higher than 85%, and it will be restored after 5 seconds. This round of copy clearance failed. Sotingyu's eyes lit up several times instantly. Li Ji was originally ranked 10th on the hunting list at the end of the second round. He went hunting again in the third round, and his points soared to 3750. Just a minute ago, Li Ji was the 5th player on the hunting list, with enough points to make most players envious and jealous. But now, all Li Ji's points belong to Sotingyu. Sotingyu's original 650 points, plus the points obtained from Li Ji, gave him 4,450 points, instantly ranking first on the hunting list. Will he take off? Wow! It feels so good to get rich overnight, Sotingyu couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise and sighed. I'm really grateful to Li Ji de Chives. Therefore, in order to express her deep gratitude, Sotingyu squatted on the corpse, waiting for the true body to appear. 5 seconds is up. Li Ji's true form appeared. His face was extremely pale, and his eyes were filled with rage that surged like a stormy sea. The furious Li Ji didn't say a harsh word, but immediately turned around and wanted to run away. In fact, if he didn't still have some sense, Li Ji would have really wanted to fight Sotingyu at this moment. Aha! Sotingyu snorted lightly, and didn't even have to give the order himself. The little Kanhuas, who had learned the lesson from the last time, were already staring at Li Ji's every move. The 7 small broken flowers changed into their original shapes together. Using the huge body as a support point, the vines stretched and intertwined with each other, forming a green sealed cage, trapping Li Ji inside. The 7 little broken flowers had a clear understanding at this moment. This time, we must not let this miserable 2-legged beast escape. Otherwise, if mistakes are made again and again, they will be the ones who are miserable. Losing the chance to escape, Li Ji stopped instead. He turned to look back at Sotingyu, his eyes filled with venom and anger, and said with a sullen face, Angel Su, you'd better not let me know who you are. When Sotingyu tore apart Li Ji's doll body, he was already within 2 meters, and the latter inquired about the game nickname. Now that everyone knows Sotingyu's nickname in the game, Li Ji's last words are obviously referring to Sotingyu's real identity. Sotingyu's eyes darkened slightly. While he was wary of Li Ji's deadly counterattack, he swung his sickle and slashed at Li Ji's neck. But what surprised Sotingyu was that Li Ji didn't make any move to escape until the last second, and waited for death calmly. It wasn't until Sotingyu saw Li Ji's head falling to the ground that he breathed a sigh of relief. Sotingyu had been guarding against Li Ji, who would disregard the rules before he died and attack her as a hunter. Before this, Sotingyu had never encountered a prey player who lost his mind or was dominated by anger, and wanted only to kill her. If Li Ji really breaks the rules, then this person's danger will be reduced a lot. But now, it seems to be a bit troublesome. Sotingyu picked up the 3 game items dropped by Li Ji, and then put the little flowers into the inventory together. The 405th round of hunting ends and the 406th round of hunting begins. The 406th round of hunting time, 2300 hours minus 2320. The 406th round of hunter players, 4501-4600 doll brooch numbers. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuan-K. Chapter 196. Li Ji was killed. Who is this Angel Su? Li Ji was actually eliminated. On the hunting list, Li Ji's removal and Sutingyu's sudden rise to the top of the list shocked all the players who were paying attention to the list. For a time, most of the players were not only surprised at Li Ji's elimination, but also had some thoughts about Sutingyu. At this time, Sutingyu's consciousness returned to the doll's body. As soon as Sutingyu came back, a duck doll jumped over excitedly, "Boss! You are so awesome! You immediately became the number one on the list." Ahem, calm down. Sutingyu acted like a boss who was unfazed by flattery, but the little person inside was already jumping up and down with excitement. Although Gucci was surprised that Sutingyu met Li Ji again this round, he was not too surprised by the result. A person who can fool a child NPC is very brave, but his strength may be weak. At this time, Gucci's eyes inadvertently caught a glimpse of the red panda next to Sutingyu. The red panda was a little restless, twisting its small body and turning its head in the direction of Sutingyu, as if it wanted to say something. After watching for a few seconds, Gucci turned his head and reminded Sutingyu, "You eliminated Li Ji this time. He must have a grudge against you. Be careful in reality and don't expose your identity." If there were any official members of scene here, their jaws would definitely be shocked by what Gucci said. When would Mr. Ju be so kind as to remind others to pay attention to their safety? Or a woman? If he didn't add insult to injury and stepped on him a few more times, it would be considered a great mercy on his part. But among the three people present, Fatty had worked as Gucci's driver, but he had not had much exposure to Gucci's ruthless tactics behind his back. In Fatty's mind, Gucci still had the image of a great, upright, good man and big boss. Not to mention Sutingyu and Qinchi, they had just met Gucci, didn't know him well, and didn't think there was much problem with what he said. Yes, Sutingyu responded. Although offending Li Ji would be a bit troublesome. But Sutingyu was not afraid of him at all, nor was he in vain, nor would he regret enmity with Li Ji. Moreover, the person who should regret now is Li Ji. He was the one who took that shot, and Sutingyu remembered him deeply. This shouldn't be a big deal, after all, we live in the kingdom of heaven. How dare that Li Ji come to our country to kill people, said the fat man. Gucci, anyway, be careful, Li Ji can do anything if he goes crazy. Don't worry, he can't find me yet. Sutingyu was confident and not worried at all. Her identity is a state secret. If Li Ji wants to check her real identity, then he should check it. At this time, Sutingyu felt something touch her and shrank back. Sutingyu turned around and took a look and saw a red panda that was hesitant to speak. Seeing Sutingyu looking over, the red panda leaned over and kept rubbing its head against her, as if to reassure her. Seeing this, Sutingyu chuckled, "It's okay, then Li Ji can't threaten me." After saying that, Sutingyu stretched out his paw and touched the red panda's head. But the red panda was not much comforted. In the game, he can also help big fish. But in reality, he is just a useless person, and he has to bother Dayu and Fatty to take care of him throughout the whole process. The more the red panda thought about it, the more depressed he became. Bukaizen. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 197. Because Sutingyu eliminated Li Ji and climbed to the top of the list, those fake game items seemed a bit mediocre. Currently, Sutingyu dominates the rankings, but there are many other high-ranking players like Gucci and Qinchi who fell behind in the rankings because they did not have time to hunt. Whether Sutingyu can remain at the top of the list is still unknown. The third round of hunting continues. A church, first floor. Hundreds of children, neatly dressed, sat in rows on church chairs. Hundreds of pairs of watery eyes stared at the cross in front of them, their faces calm and peaceful. Suddenly, a male player covered in blood staggered out from the arch on the left side of the cross. After walking a few steps, he fell to the ground. Within a few seconds, another slightly fat male player walked out. Unlike the former who was suffering from many injuries, his face was filled with the joy of a hunter who was about to succeed in hunting, and he was holding a blood-stained sword in his hand. "Stop struggling, you," the fat man just said, but slowly, he felt something was wrong. He turned his head and looked directly into hundreds of pairs of empty eyes. What the hell? The slightly fat man was frightened for a moment, but when he realized that these were just a group of child NPCs, he suddenly felt a little embarrassed by being frightened, and cursed. However, the slightly fat man made no further moves. This is a copy related to Children's Day. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that these child NPCs are not to be messed with. The fat man will not deal with hundreds of child NPCs just for a little face. The male player, covered in blood, was still crawling on the ground, holding on for breath and trying to escape. "Don't waste my time, I have to find another prey." The fat man stepped closer and slowly raised the big knife in his hand. "Why?" At this time, hundreds of children slowly stood up and spoke in unison. "Why fight? Why bleed? Why fight?" Hundreds of pairs of eyes stared at the only two adults present. The child's whispers over and over again echoed in the empty church. Snapped. The heavy door of the church seemed to be blown by the wind and closed. The entire cathedral seemed to isolate the entire world. What's going on?" The slightly fat man was frightened back several steps by this battle. The hand holding the big knife had goosebumps all over his arm, and his right eyelid began to beat violently and could not stop no matter what. It seemed to indicate that something bad was going to happen. "Why fight? Why bleed? Why fight?" While the children were reciting these three sentences back and forth, they slowly left their respective positions and walked towards the two players. The male player on the ground, who was unable to struggle to escape, raised his head in confusion, and immediately looked at a dozen crouched children. The fat man's back was already pressed against the wall. The children who came over stopped next to the male player on the ground. Just when the fat man was panicking and wondering what those children were up to, his pupils suddenly shrank. Horror and astonishment spread all over his face instantly. The leaf-like windows are inlaid with colorful glass with exquisite patterns. The majestic and towering church is like a holy and dustless pilgrimage place. But no one knows what is happening inside. And the children's amusement park, which is peaceful, full of laughter and laughter, seems to be carrying out scenes of bloody massacres in some unknown places. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 198. The seventh day of the copy. Copy time, 6:006:20. In the secret room, a rabbit doll emits white light. The white light dissipated, Gucci's figure appeared on the spot, and the rabbit doll had fallen limply to the ground, motionless. Gucci glanced at the sleeping red panda, then opened the secret door and went out. Once outside, Gucci used his professional talents. As far as he could see, in the nearby buildings, the doll bodies that he thought were well hidden were all discovered by Gucci. As for whether he could hunt down the doll body, the only thing that limited Gucci was time and distance. In Gucci's mind, everything he saw was digitized, and in just a few seconds, he planned a route that passed through the most dolls and was so accurate that there were no redundant sections. Gucci set off. On the planned route, harvesting doll bodies along the way, you will occasionally encounter some tough ones, but the rules of the game between hunter and prey place too many restrictions on the latter. Generally speaking, as long as the prey player is discovered, and the strength gap between the two sides is not very different, even if the prey player is stronger than the hunter player in the original state, he will still be hunted down and eliminated. Third minute. Number of kills, 5. Fifth minute. Number of kills, 12. Seventh minute. Number of kills, 21. It was already the third round, and the players who could participate in the event dungeon had all joined or formed some teams, So as soon as Gucci found the prey players, they would gather together to find them. After hunting the 30th prey player, Gucci picked up the dropped game items and continued on the established route. The streets were still crowded with people. The shop was still bustling with activity. But as Gucci walked among them, he slowly felt something was wrong. It seemed like someone was watching him, from behind. Gucci turned his head and searched everywhere, but found nothing. The children coming and going were still laughing and playing, as if they didn't care that he was an adult staying here. Gucci frowned slightly. What happened? That's not an illusion. Gucci never believed in feelings, but he believed in his own judgment. Forget it, let's continue looking for the next prey. Gucci glanced around at the children with smiles on their faces. The longer I looked at them, the more I felt that the smiles on their faces were very stiff, and they seemed to be forced to smile. Since it was a forced smile that he didn't want to laugh, it would be better to say that he was crying. Gucci continued walking towards the hiding spot of the next target. However, there is one more guess in my mind. The highlight of this round of dungeons may be coming. 20 minutes is neither long nor short. For hunter players, it is too short, but for prey players, it is too long. 20 minutes later, the rabbit doll in the secret room stood up. Gucci is back. He subconsciously looked in one direction and saw that the red panda was still sleeping, with all four paws spread out on the ground, revealing its swollen belly. "Boss, you're back." Next to him, the fat man greeted with a smile. Gucci calmly withdrew his gaze and responded lightly, "Yes." "Guju, what did you find when you went out?" Sutinyu asked. "After these 2 rounds, every time someone comes back, Fatty will say hello or something like that immediately." Sutinyu, on the other hand, was not surprised at all. From the distant and polite Guju at the beginning, to the casual and natural Guju now. This gave Gucci a strange feeling, which he had never experienced before in seeing Orgu's family. Very novel. But it seems that he is not disgusted. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 199. The 8th day of the copy. Copy time, 2000 hours. The 540th round of hunting ends. The 3rd round of hunting time has ended. Now entering a half-hour vacuum period, all players will resume their original bodies. All players are invited to gather at the large playground of the Children's Inn. A message popped up on the panel. Without any surprise, the gathering location changed again. Sutinyu and others came out of the secret room, and the warm but not hot sunlight shone down. Sutinyu stretched a little. Although it was safe to hide in the secret room, there was no sunlight all day long, only the light of incandescent lamps, and the whole person's condition was a bit withered. "Why does it feel like the sun's rays are not warm at all?" Fatty muttered. After hearing the fat man's words, the other people felt it carefully. It seemed that the temperature at the beginning was indeed gone. When the sun shines on your skin, you don't feel any heat, but instead feel a little cool. "Go to the meeting place first," Gucci said. The large playground in the Children's Innocence Center is easy to find. When Sutinyu first entered the dungeon, he saw the giant playground facilities, which were quite conspicuous. Seeing that we could reach the amusement park just 2 streets away, unexpectedly, a group of players wearing morning clothes and wearing wooden clogs suddenly appeared in the shops on both sides. Almost everyone held a samurai sword in their hands, and in less than 10 seconds, the 4 of them were surrounded. Sutinyu's eyes widened slightly and he took a look at the faces of those people. Oh, it turned out to be a group of Japanese players who had a good life. No wonder he's wearing filial piety clothes. Tisk tisk, ah, no, that's a samurai uniform. There are foreign players in Parallel Paradise. When I usually go to the forum or look at the rankings, I can often see some content with 2 lines of words tightly packed together. The font of the bottom line is smaller and a bracket is added. If you see this, it means that you are a foreign player. He named the game nickname in his own language and spoke on the forum. In order to allow all players to communicate without barriers, the panel system will automatically translate the languages of players from other countries for all players. The large font at the top is the content translated in the player's native language, and the content in parentheses below is the original content for foreign players. If players from different countries meet in the same round of dungeons, and both parties use their respective native languages, the panel system will also translate the content on the panel in a timely manner. Sutinyu also thought about meeting foreign players one day. Unexpectedly, I met Zairibo. Somehow, Sutinyu was suddenly eager to give it a try. The sickles and bricks in the inventory are already hungry. You hand over all the doll bodies. Otherwise you will fight to the death. At this time, the player who was suspected to be the leader of Zairi Wali spoke, pointing the tip of his knife at Sutinyu and the 4 of them, with an arrogant and domineering expression. Oh haha. He's pretty good at barking. The smile on Sutinyu's face gradually deepened. The panels of the 4 people opened automatically, and they were constantly translating the arrogant remarks of those little Japanese. Tisk Gucci sneered. The next second, his eyes turned cold. Kill. No need for too many cumbersome words. Gucci and Shinchi, one on the left and one on the right, attacked the Japanese and Japanese players on both sides. 2 more daggers appeared between the fingers of Gucci's right hand. With a flick of his wrist, the daggers were like a bolt of lightning, driving into the eyebrows of the 2 Japanese and Japanese players in the blink of an eye. An ancient bronze sword appeared in Shinchi's hand. The evil spirit lingered around the sword. The sword edge flashed. A bloodline appeared on the necks of the 3 Japanese players at the front, and then blood spurted out. In just a few breaths, 5 Japanese and Japanese players died. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 200. Baga Yalu, witnessing 5 of his subordinates dying all of a sudden, the Japanese leader was furious. Go up! Go up! Hack them to death! At this order, more than 50 Japanese and Japanese players present rushed forward. Sutinyu took a few steps forward and met Xiaoribo, who was at the front of the 4. The tiles on the right hand, shoot each one as you see it. The sickle in the left hand cuts 2 of the 2. Gucci and Shinchi have been responsible for dealing with the Japanese pirates on the left and right, and now only the 4 people are left at the rear. The Japanese in the rear saw a fat man blocking the road who didn't look threatening, and they instantly became very energetic. Kill, kill, kill. Seeing this, the fat man gritted his teeth and said, fight. He directly used the ability of the bathing fire pearl, and his whole body was on fire. Ah! Come on, the fat man, whose whole body was covered with fire, screamed, and then he rushed towards the rising Japanese pirates. Back off! Back off! This surprising change made the originally aggressive Japanese players look confused. Seeing that the raging fire was about to hit his face, Zairiwa, who was rushing at the front, screamed anxiously, kept retreating, and then retreated one after another. The scene looked ridiculous. Come on! Come on! The fat man opened his arms and roared at the Japanese player, but the latter was a little frightened and did not dare to rush forward. For a moment, the fat man relied on his bluff to gain the upper hand in terms of momentum. After Sutinyu slapped a Japanese player away, he took the time to turn back and pay attention to the fat man's situation. Seeing the fat man becoming unexpectedly powerful and domineering, Sutinyu raised his eyebrows slightly, quietly released 2 small broken flowers, and let them secretly assist the fat man, and then stopped taking care of it. With just this little Japanese, Sotinyu didn't even think it was necessary to release the remaining little flowers. To torture a little Japanese, it's better to do it yourself. Sotinyu then shot another Japanese player away, and then another one rushed up. She was just about to swing out the sickle, but suddenly she felt a sense of crisis coming over her, and she held the sickle in front of her face with her backhand. The next second, the katana with strong wind struck the sickle, sparking a series of sparks. Feeling the growing weight on the scythe, Sotinyu's eyes narrowed slightly, and he exerted force on his wrist. With a flick of the scythe, the Japanese man holding the samurai sword was knocked back several steps. Sotinyu put away the knife, took a step back, and glanced at the blade of the sickle from the corner of his eye. There was already a crack. This is just an ordinary grade scythe. The opponent's katana must be at least 2 grades higher than her scythe to have the ability to damage ordinary props with just one blow. When Sotinyu chose the longer and more difficult upgrade path for his sickle, he also had shortcomings, and now they are highlighted. In a short period of time, the level of the sickle cannot be improved, which is a big disadvantage when facing higher level game props. Flower girl, let's capture her without any effort. A wild and triumphant smile appeared on the Japanese player's face. He had long noticed that Sotinyu's sickle was not of a high grade, but he had a diamond-grade samurai sword, which made him completely invincible. Sotinyu put the sickle and bricks back into the inventory, and then took out a 3-meter-long stick weapon with a shiny silver body, with white cloud-like airflow patterns carved on it, and some rare and exotic animals of various shapes. This was one of the trophies tricked by Sotinyu, a rare-grade misty stick. What did you say? Say it again, Sotinyu asked in a calm tone. Looking at this obviously high-grade Piao Miao stick, the expressions of the Japanese and Japanese players suddenly changed. The monthly ticket adds more updates, 2 chapters, no cuteness, threats, allowed. It's the last week of the month. Please subscribe. I hope the ranking on the bestseller list can move forward and become more stable. Please give me a monthly pass. I haven't decided yet whether I should continue to get monthly passes and add updates next month. Maybe I won't do it next month. Cherish the opportunity to squeeze me this month, hee. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 201. Sotinyu held the stick in one hand, raised his free left hand slightly, and raised his fingers provocatively at the Japanese and Japanese players. Come on. Ah. Baga, the Japanese player was obviously irritated. She was just a little girl, but she dared to provoke the warriors of the Yamato nation. You. And you. Come with me. The Japanese and Japanese player was a little wary of the misty stick that Sotinyu brought out, so he immediately called on several Japanese and Japanese players to rush forward at the same time. The Japanese player at the beginning suddenly flashed several white arcs on the katana in his hand. The blades hit each other with arcs of electricity. Sotinyu looked indifferent, and instead of retreating, he advanced. With a flick of his wrist, he used a whole ethereal stick to blast forward. The Piao Miao stick made waves of violent sound of breaking through the air. He struck back and used the absolute length advantage to turn his wrist again. The head of the stick suddenly changed its direction and used a tricky angle to avoid the Japanese and Japanese players' blockade. Then a poke. Right in the abdomen. The Japanese player's back immediately arched, and his face instantly turned blue and purple. Another pick. Lifted high. The feeling of weightlessness from the ground followed one after another, and he couldn't help but scream. Ah! Sotinyu flicked his wrist, and the wooden stick swept out the Japanese players who were attacking from the right. Even the Japanese player who was provoked was thrown out. Ouch! Seeing that it was one of his own, several samurai swords were hurriedly withdrawn, but they were all knocked to the ground. Kill, kill. The Japanese and Japanese players on the left had already arrived. Sotinyu turned around, and the Piao Miao stick was passed from his right hand to his left hand in an instant, and then swept out with another stick. The surface of the Piao Miao stick emits a faint layer of silver light, and the airflow around it begins to flow around the outer lines. The air resistance is not only reduced to the extreme, but also creates an invisible layer of stick armor on the outer layer. Before the Piao Miao stick came into contact with the Japanese players, the airflow condensed around the stick directly swayed away several Japanese players who wanted to rush up. Sutingyu turned his wrist slightly, turned around and put away the stick. Behind them, the Japanese players were blown away by the airflow and fell to the ground a few meters away. Their internal organs felt like they were about to be shattered, and some even vomited blood and fainted. Boom! Suddenly, a dark cloud appeared in the clear and cloudless sky, with thunder roaring and lightning flashing. What's going on? Sutingyu frowned in confusion. This dark cloud only appeared above them, showing no signs of drifting away, which was a bit unreasonable. The appearance of Wu Yun was also noticed by Guqi and Qin. Their eyes scanned the Japanese players, and then they all locked onto the crowd. The Japanese leader was holding an ancient book, which was spread out in half. On both hands, the man seemed to be mumbling words. Over there. It's a professional player. Upon seeing this situation, the two reacted instantly. No wonder this group of Japanese players dared to intercept other players on the street. It turned out that there were professional players among them. A few meters away, Guqi and Qin looked at each other, and without saying a word, they ran towards the Japanese leader who was casting a spell. Quick! Stop them! Some of the Japanese players saw Guqi and Qin's intentions and shouted. As a result, the Japanese players who made a fuss chased after the two of them. The two quickly passed Sutingyu in front of them. When the latter saw this, he turned around and blocked all the Japanese players who wanted to pursue him. The stick head on one side fell to the ground and hit the ground with a muffled sound. Sutingyu looked around and said to all the Japanese players in front of him, "This road is blocked." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Being a Bug in a Survival Game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 202. Nani, a group of Japanese players were suddenly confused. How dare this flower girl stand in front of so many warriors of the Yamato nation? Even if she can fight, can she still beat a group of people? Charge. Bagayarode. Kill. Bagayarode. A group of Japanese players rushed over aggressively, trying to hack Sutingyu to death. And the next second, Sutingyu taught all the little Japanese to be human again. The ethereal stick swings out. Just like the ethereal airflow, it is unpredictable, hitting the fragile body parts of the Japanese players at various tricky angles. Bang bang bang. Ah, ah. The sound of the ethereal stick cracking bones is mixed with the ecstatic screams that rise and fall from time to time, as if a moving percussion music is being staged. Sutingyu released two more small broken flowers, letting them extend vines and take away all the doll bodies carried by the seriously injured Japanese players. When those Japanese players found out that something was trying to take away their doll bodies, they were all frightened and angry, and wanted to stop them, but some couldn't even get up. Even if he managed to get up, he still grabbed the Japanese player with the doll body cloth bag. Xiao Kanhua pulled twice and found that he couldn't pull it, so he slapped him with a big mouth. Little broken flower, bring it to you. This slap will make the Japanese players dizzy and doubtful about their lives. Little Kanhua got the cloth bag smoothly and went to pull off another one. The other side. Without any worries, Guqi and Qin were about to approach the Japanese leader who was casting a spell. At this time, a bald Japanese player with a strong back and a fierce face stood in front of the two of them. He was holding a samurai sword in each hand. "Drink," the bald warrior shouted, his eyes scorning the two men. "Come on. Cowards of the East. Let's fight to the death." When they felt the completely different power of the two samurai swords, Gucci and Chin-Chi made a judgment in their minds at the same time. Another professional player. After the two looked at each other again, Gucci nodded slightly. Upon seeing this, Chin-Chi's eyes flashed slightly. Then, the two of them turned their heads, the weapons in their hands showed their sharpness, and slowly approached the bald warrior step by step. Gucci moved first. With his flexible and slender fingers, he instantly launched the two daggers hidden between his fingers, right into the eyes of the bald warrior's face. This cunning and fierce attack forced the bald warrior to defend and block. Clang! Clang! The dagger that was shot carried two powerful forces. The bald warrior was not fully prepared for the moment, and his body swayed slightly from the shock, but he quickly stabilized his body. Baga Yalu. Ba. The bald warrior felt that he had lost face. He roared angrily but was immediately stuck. An ancient bronze sword with overwhelming evil power struck down on the head. Chin-Chi held the hilt with rare hands, his face tensed, and he used all his strength to suppress the bald warrior who was hastily blocking. The bald warrior almost knelt down on one knee to resist the fierce attack. At this moment, Gucci seized the opportunity, easily bypassed the bald warrior, and went straight to the last Japanese leader who was about to successfully cast a spell. Above the head, violent lightning flashed in the dark clouds, and the thunder became louder and louder, as if a terrifying giant beast was about to wake up inside. "You can't stop me!" Ha ha ha! The spell was about to be successfully cast, and the Japanese leader raised his head and laughed, his laughter full of arrogance and coldness. At this time, Gucci was still about 10 meters away from the Japanese leader who was casting the spell, and the dark clouds summoned by the spell above his head were about to take shape, and the dangerous aura of death was getting stronger. Gucci stopped where he was, as if he had given up struggling. When the Japanese leader saw this, he pointed his middle finger at Gucci, who was still laughing mockingly. At this time, Gucci turned his head slightly and took off the pair of sunglasses on his eyes with one hand. Being a bug in a survival game. Author, Kuanke. Chapter 203. After Gucci took off his sunglasses, he looked at the Japanese leader with a pair of eyes that seemed to be stained with cold purple light. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The Japanese leader's wild smile slowly disappeared, his eyes became dull and lifeless, and the ancient book he was holding for casting spells fell to the ground. At this time, the dark clouds overhead slowly calmed down, and the lightning that had been preparing to strike also lost its signs. 3 seconds later, the Japanese leader suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, escaped from the control of the pupil technique, and regained consciousness. But it's too late. If a mage's spellcasting is forcibly interrupted for more than 3 seconds, all that awaits them is irreversible failure, and even death. The biggest hidden danger was removed. Gucci put on his sunglasses again, and then walked step by step in the direction of the Japanese leader. Someone! Someone! The Japanese player whose spellcasting was interrupted suffered the backlash of the spell, and now he only managed to hold on to prevent himself from falling. But facing the approaching Gucci, the Japanese leader panicked and shouted to come and save him. "Stop shouting, no one can save your life," Gucci mocked softly. A new dagger appeared in the palm of his hand, and without any hesitation, he plunged it into the temple of the Japanese leader. Finally, the Japanese leader stared with unwilling eyes and completely lost his breath. After the Japanese leader was eliminated, the remaining minions began to mess around and became vulnerable. Sutinyu and Fatty restrained the remaining Japanese players. When they saw their leader was killed, some of them started to fight with red eyes, while others had the intention of retreating and thinking of escaping. But with the little Ken who was guarding them, Sutinyu never let go of any Japanese players. He killed them all, crippled them, and then snatched away their doll bodies. The battle between Chin-Chi and the Japanese warrior gradually came to an end. Chin-Chi used an ancient bronze sword to forcefully destroy the opponent's two rare-grade samurai swords. The final sword seals the throat. Before dying, the Japanese warrior roared unconvinced, "The warriors of the Yamato nation did not lose. They just lost their weapons." Chin-Chi Len watched him covering the wound on his neck and still struggling desperately. Chin-Chi thought for a while, then used the tip of his sword to pick up the cloth bag on the Japanese warrior's body, and stabbed it with several swords. The doll body inside was smashed into a ball of rags. A panel pops up, showing that he has earned points. Seeing this, Chin-Chi's eyebrows relaxed a little. "Well, let's get points before anyone is dead." Chin-Chi's move directly became the last straw for the Japanese warriors. "This man is completely dead." With their hands free, Gucci and Chin-Chi went back to help. After a while, they subdued all the remaining Japanese players. After searching out all the doll bodies of the Japanese players who were still alive, the four of them destroyed the doll bodies first to get points, and then killed the Japanese players. Because if the player body dies first, the doll body will also disappear immediately, so the points will not be obtained. It's a pity that we killed 30 or so little Japanese pirates first. What a loss. After the four people finished allocating the heads, Sutinyu looked at the Japanese players who had died first, with a look of distress visible on his face, and kept shaking his head and sighing. After Sutinyu sighed, he patted the fat man on the shoulder. "Fat man, you are awesome this time." "It's okay, no matter what, I can't be timid in front of Xiaoraiwa." The fat man smiled innocently. In fact, the most annoying person was Fatty. After those Japanese players were frightened by Fatty at first, they quickly figured out how to deal with it. If Fatty hadn't been good at saving lives and fighting, and had two little broken flowers to help him, he might not have been able to hold on and kill the Japanese leader, and the Japanese players would have been shattered.